Welcome to the Empowered Life podcast with Dustin Vaughn Warncke. Join Dustin as your guide to learning about unlocking your life's ultimate potential. Through inspiring conversations with special guests and proven wisdom, Dustin explores the interconnected values of personal growth, professional success, and a wholesome life filled with love and light. This show is based on tactical and practical concepts for life's greatest successes and achieving your goals, while also being full of inspiration to help you live your best life right now. Discover how to cultivate a mindset of empowerment, achieve success, and create a meaningful impact on the world around you, all while living with purpose, meaning, and significance. Dustin is a former associate publisher of Texas Fish and Game magazine, the author of over 10 books, owner of his own digital marketing agency, an outdoor TV show host, a video and podcast producer. And he will also become one of your best friends forever. Now, get ready to get inspired to live in gratitude. Here's your host, Dustin Vaughn Warncke.
Welcome to our show, and thank you so much for joining us today. This is your host, Dustin Vaughn Warncke, the host that boasts the most roast. Just joking about that one. Here with my son, Jackson. I've wanted to do a podcast with this kiddo for a long time. He's 15 years old. He is the man of the hour. And what do you always say about me?
I think you're the best dad ever.
You think I'm the best dad ever?
Yes.
Okay, let me just ask everybody listening to this. Who gets a teenager, especially, like that? I'm like the luckiest man in the world. I'm just saying. I am. Yeah, I know. No, I know. Kind of embarrassing. Yeah, it's fine. All right, Jackson, tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me about your history. Tell me about, what it's been like growing up with your dad. And we're going to talk about some life stuff on this podcast. Okay, are you ready for that?
Yes.
Do you think you are?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Awesome.
All right, let's go. It's your turn.
Little history about me is my earliest memory of my dad is on the phone. Some of the earliest memory I have of him and him taking me to McDonald's.
Mm-hmm. For good times.
I don't know.
Come on. Keep talking.
I like Star Wars. I like my dad. I like to hunt with my dad. I like
Yep.
to fish with my
We
dad.
love to go hunting and fishing. Yep. It's good. What else?
I don't know. I'm just glad I have a father figure in my life.
Well, I'm grateful to be a father figure in your life. I have said in my books and many things that I've done over the years, being a dad is the best thing I've ever done with my life. Okay, I appreciate you appreciating that. All right. So I'm going to ask you some questions. Okay. Let's start with, where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Where I see myself in 10 years is probably, being a biologist.
You want to be a biologist, like a wildlife biologist?
Something like that.
Like Larry
Zoology.
Washington,
Yeah, I just want to be a biologist. I love biology. I love, learning about plants and all that.
That was my hardest subject in high school.
I love it.
Did you know that?
I did.
Hardest subject. And I thought I'd be great. I thought I'd ace it because I hunted and I didn't hunt back then, but I fish a lot. And my dad actually brought your grandfather, your Opie, brought a largemouth bass in that he was going to what do you call it? Like mount, like he was going to do a fish mount. And long story short, he ended up bringing that frozen. I brought it into my biology teacher and we dissected and everything. And I got like a C- when we did that whole deal. And I was like, but I supplied the fish,
Yeah.
So I mean, come on, So it was one of those things. But long story short, you want to be a biologist, maybe a wildlife biologist, because you love nature, correct?
I love nature.
Very good. And I know that you groan every time I bring up the fact that time, space, and matter had to have come to an existence at the same exact time. Go ahead and groan. Yeah, I know. You go ahead. But that's an interesting thing that I find about life and just how it all came to an existence is the fact that we have both prey creatures and predator creatures in the world that we live in. Okay, and that's by design. I think that's by an intelligent design. So, give me some prey creatures.
Rabbits.
Yep. Got rabbits here where we're staying. Yep.
Fish.
Fish. Yeah.
Fish. Yeah.
Well, some fish are predatory.
Some fish are predatory.
And some fish are prey.
I mean, most fish are prey.
But how about like wildlife animals, like animals, So like a predator would be like.
I know.
No.
I'm thinking. Maybe
So like.
A dog would be.
What do we hunt all the time?
Deer.
And.
Hog.
Wild hogs. Yep. We have those a lot in Texas. We probably have more wild hogs in Texas than we have people. But anyway, that's pretty crazy. Jackson's a great hunter, great shooter, great marksman. I've taught him all the stuff that I can growing up, as he grew up. That I was taught, and a lot of my stuff I didn't have anybody in front of me to be able to teach, and so it was one of those things that was hard at times to I had to go and learn it myself. And we didn't have YouTube when I started shooting and all that stuff. Basically, I just had to learn the breath control and everything else from other guys that were just hanging out in the range trying to help me. So had a lot of great mentors along the way, and so have you.
Awesome.
So that's a great thing. So basically, let's see. How can I add value to your life, Jackson?
What do you mean?
How can I add value to your life? That's one of the questions I like to ask people that are very close to me.
Just being around me.
Just being present, right?
Just being my dad. That's all you got to do.
I love that. That's great. Again, who gets a kid like this? This is great. All right. And what are some of your goals and dreams for the future?
Probably just, going to college, passing high school.
Yeah.
Just following biology. Just having a good home, having a good wife, having a good car, all that.
Yeah.
Just having a steady lifestyle.
Very good. Very good. So, do you want kids? I mean, you say...
Yeah.
You want kids?
I would like kids.
You like to have kids? Do you like boys, girls?
Boys.
Yeah?
You
come from a family of nothing but boys.
Yeah,
that's why you're a boy.
Family of
right?
Single children.
Oh, single children too. Your mom was single child. I was a single only child. I was an only child, and now you're an only child. So, but yeah, that's good. If you could travel anywhere in the world, where would you go and why?
I would probably go to Germany. I'd probably go to Germany to just to see where I originate from. I just want to see their unique lifestyle. What they drink, what they eat, how they live.
That's fair.
I've always
kind of your European ancestors.
Yeah,
you have
wanted to visit Germany.
All the way back to your great grandfather Heinrich Warncke and all that stuff. So
I'd love to visit
that's great.
That'd be awesome.
And then really in our German heritage here in the United States, our particular family came over, I believe, on the port of Indianola. I know my mom's side of the family came through on that, and that is now underwater because of a hurricane in the early 1900s. Did you know that?
I did not.
Anyway, the port of Indianola was a very important port that a lot of German settlers came through back then into Texas, and that's how they settled in. The interesting thing is that a lot of people may not know this as well. There's stories that 6,000 people in one group left the port of Indianola, which is on the Texas coast, and traveled all the way through, and 1,500 of them made it to where we are staying right now in New Braunfels, Texas. So some settled along the way, some died. Yeah. It was like the Ozark Trail, but it was real.
Oh, yeah.
It was very, 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 serious thing. So I always look back at our ancestors and that kind of stuff, and some of the trials and tribulations they went through to have us basically have the life that we have today. They paid the price for that. So I think that's important.
Closer.
No, closer. I got to bring the microphone closer to you. Well, you got to talk louder.
No.
Well, not too loud.
Fine.
Oh, fine. All right. What pet do you prefer to have? Because you have both cats and dogs.
I got to ask me this.
A hamster, horse, bird, turtle, snake, pet? No pet at all, or all the above?
Well, I like all animals. I'm not prejudiced against any animals.
Cool. Good.
I mean, I prefer, a cat because they're self-grooming. They pretty much live on their own.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I also prefer dogs because they're energetic. They have all the energy in the world. One little ball of love.
They have a lot of love for their owners. Cats are kind of indifferent, and that's one thing. But cats are also self-cleaning, which is nice. I wish dogs are self-cleaning, but that's not the way.
You got to clean up dog messes.
Yeah, that's right.
That's not fun.
That's not fun.
No, but I mean, in the end, they're really worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let me ask you this. What is one thing that you wish you could change about yourself?
One thing I would change about myself is, I don't know.
I don't know. Is that like a trick question or something? Or
I don't know.
Like a pop quiz or something? All right.
Probably just maybe, being more open to new ideas.
Maybe more patient. Can I say that?
Yes, you can.
You have a little bit of a temper problem sometimes.
Yes, I do have patience problems.
That's okay.
It's all your fault.
It's all my fault. It's always all my fault. That's fine. All right. What is a hot button issue? One thing that makes you really angry, like really mad? Like, is it like politics? Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Can I say that on
You can say
here?
politics on here, but I don't want to know your political views so much as just more of like an issue. So, I mean,
One thing I hate.
well, not hate. You don't have to use the word hate on the show.
Dislike.
But dislike. Bitterly dislike. How about that?
Probably all the polluting that's going on.
Polluting. Okay. So polluting our environment. And it's interesting you say that because, you know, for the listeners of this show, I had a podcast called the Best of the Outdoors podcast. Jackson was with me to, you know, and saw me record many of the episodes for that show. And I'm still adding a few new episodes with some content that I'm creating to that show. But when I was at Texas Fish and Game, and I was the associate publisher my last year there, and Chester Moore and I did a few interviews, and he was the associate publisher, still is the associate publisher at the time of this recording of that magazine. And basically, he would often say, you know, clean water and clean land, like clean landscapes and like like anti-pollution is not a political statement.
I don't think it is.
It is just about humanity, like having nice, you know, having a nice place to go fish, having a nice place to go hike, having a nice place to go hunt, you know, or whatever the case may be, whatever you're into, you know. I don't think that saying that I want clean water, for instance, is a political statement, you know. You may say, well, I take the environmental stance of this, or I take the, you know, the whatever. But like Larry Washoon says, which I produce his podcast, and that is called DSC's Campfires with Larry Washoon. It's a hunting and fishing outdoors podcast, but it's more of also just a very like life, a podcast about life. I was recently on his show here last month, but basically as a guest, and basically, he makes the point about the difference between preservation and conservation, Jackson. So, what is the difference between preservation and conservation? Let me ask you. You have no idea? That's fine. All right. So, the difference for me is, and the difference to Larry is that conservation is preserving wildlife, and preservation is basically just the you know, it's a continuation of life when you're talking about conservation, but when it's preservation, it's basically just keeping everything that you have as it is. And preservation usually ends in death, and conservation usually ends in life. And what is one of the ways that we conserve in our wildlife population that you and I have done before together?
You know, eating.
We eat, you know, we're part of the food chain, right?
Yeah.
So we hunt and fish to eat. You know, Jackson and I are neither one trophy hunters. I don't necessarily, you know, say good or bad or otherwise about that. I've sold a lot of trophy hunts over the years, but I'll never probably go to Africa and, you know, get a bunch of stuff unless it's to feed the villages or whatever. And I know the meat's going somewhere and everything like that, because I can't bring any of the meat back. Like the meat, we've always been a meat hunting family, you know. And not that this show's about the outdoors or hunting or whatever, but I mean, this show's more about life and just the fact that how amazing predator and prey creatures by intelligent design, you know, would live a life completely without us, right? If we weren't here, the chain of life would continue without us. Would you agree?
I would definitely agree.
So what I'm saying is that the concept of, you know, of conservation is the fact that we have to participate in the food chain sometimes to make sure that wildlife continues to exist and continues to thrive. That's conservation. Preservation is basically just keeping what's there. It's more of a opportunity of lack than it is an opportunity of growth. And I just wanted to bring that up. I don't know why. That's kind of random for tonight.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me now that I understand the difference between preservation and conservation. So for whatever that's worth, but I marvel the fact that being your dad is the best thing I've ever done, you know, out of all my accomplishments, all the 10 books and all the other stuff that I've done. But also giving you meaning and setting you off at the next generation, like to be the best version of yourself. That's really my goal for your life, right? You know that, right?
Yes.
I mean, yeah, I figured as much. So, I mean, the whole idea is for you to become like the best version of yourself. What are some ways you think you could do that?
You know, not just making smart decisions and not being stupid.
Not being stupid. So what's one of the things I've told you since you were in kindergarten?
Have a good day and make good choices.
Have a good day and make good choices. I've been saying that to you like every day I had you for years. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that we could probably do better. All of us could do better, even as adults, you know, in life, is make good choices, because, you know, a lot of us have made dumb choices. A lot of us have made choices that weren't that smart. A lot of us have just made choices that we were misguided on or thought that we had better insight on.
And you're gonna make bad choices. It's human nature.
That's right.
You know?
So it makes us human, essentially. One thing that I value about you, Jackson, is the fact that you have a high level of emotional intelligence. Okay, and do you understand what I mean by that? Like an empathetic spirit. Like you're not an empath, to where you're softy at all.
Yeah, I get you.
You've been like, through some stuff. You've had some life trials and that kind of stuff, and you're a better man for them. Would you agree?
I would definitely agree with that.
I'm a better young man, but still, you're growing into a heck of a man. So, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. So, let's see here. What else? What other questions? What other questions I got for you? You told me your favorite subject in school. What would you consider the nicest thing that a parent could do for you, and that I have done for you as your parent? The nicest thing.
Probably being there for me, like all the time. Even when I'm down or even when I'm sad, you're always there for me.
Thank you.
And I just love having parents in my life because I know some people don't get that.
You're right. So your gratitude is high.
You always take care of me.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. And you're really like they always say that our kids save us, and that kind of stuff. As far as like the fact that the children sometimes become the parent in a lot of ways to save the parent, from doing something dumb or, doing, whatever the case may be. But I really believe that. Like our kids, Jackson's one of the reasons I wake up and go to work every day. He's one of the reasons why I try so hard at everything that I do and work so hard that I do, because I want to set a good example for him, number one. But number two, I want to also make sure that he has the best role model in front of him, which is setting an example, but also that that I instill and pour into him the values that are so important to living a meaningful life.
Yeah, and you've definitely instilled that in me.
Thank you.
I feel like I've had times when I'm down and I don't feel like I want to live anymore. But I just think of you, and you've taught me to live a good life.
Oh my gosh! Wow, that's so profound. Yeah, and that's one thing I'm concerned about, especially with all the technology and everything that we have in your generation, especially. You're Gen Y, I think, or you're maybe Gen Z. Are you Gen Z?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I think I'm Gen X.
No, yeah, I'm Gen X.
I'm Gen Z.
All right, you're Gen Z. All right, so one of the things I'm concerned about is that all the technology and the fact that social media and the scams and all this other stuff, are coming at our kids. I'm concerned about the fact that things, that there are some kids, the teenage suicide and that kind of stuff is a big, big important thing. And I wish that more parents were more aware and also more present in their kids' life as far as being, more, just more intentional with their children. What do you say about that? What would you recommend to parents that are listening to this, maybe that they could that want to learn ways to be a better parent to their teenagers?
I would recommend, just instilling punishments.
Really? Okay.
I would recommend, when they're not behaving well, you take away their iPad or their phone or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think you need to instill like being a parent figure in your life and in your kids' life, and you can't let technology raise your kids.
It's a very good insight, Jackson. Now, also, how did you feel when we did punish you? Like, not punish you, but basically like take away privileges and that kind of stuff.
I felt down, but I felt like I deserved it. I learned that I did something wrong, and I feel like it worked well.
So, what you're saying essentially, if I'm understanding you correctly, is that it's not all about, just being a kid's friend as a parent. You need to be a disciplinarian as well. You need to set boundaries and guidelines and rules. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Tell me more about that.
I mean, you need to set boundaries and guidelines because you are the person that raised this kid. Mm-hmm. Nobody else raises him,
and that reflects on you because that is your only that is one of your roles in that child's life, right? In your child's life, right?
Yes.
If you were a parent, okay, very good. What have you learned about raising kids from me and your mom?
You gotta feed them, clothe them, water them well. Yep. You gotta take care of them. You gotta entertain them. You gotta bring them joy. You gotta make sure that you're there for them.
But one of the themes I'm picking up from you is that it is very important to just be present, and that's one thing I feel like I could have done a better job for. I know you give me a lot of grace for that, but I have, I'm kind of a recovering workaholic. I would always constantly be in your life and constantly have some kind of distraction or the phone or whatever. And the technology has gotten more and more. And you really, the life you've lived since 2009 when you were born, like everything blew up since then, man. I mean, like we didn't have some of the things that we have now as far as the technology, the websites, the streaming services, that kind of stuff. Everything changed when you were born. Like I think that was kind of a turning point in our history as far as like the way we consume media, the way, like I always talk about, the nation of access versus the nation of ownership, right? Back when you were born, your mom and I were like ordering DVDs and that kind of stuff and mailing them back. And then what happened with Netflix? And everything went on streaming because the internet got better. The technology got better. So really, I see it as one of the best times to be alive because I consider, and I don't know if you agree with me or not, but I consider that we live in the golden age. The only thing is, though, it is like a slippery slope. Because the other end of it is the fact that you can also like like you were saying earlier, let technology raise your kids. Do everything yourself without having any kind of like wherewithal and intentionality in your kid's life because you're so busy like on your own stuff or they're on their own stuff or whatever, and they disconnect. And I'm glad that like I've raised a kid that isn't like just so sold out on, oh God, I've got to watch this like YouTube video right now, Dad, leave me alone. And sometimes you can be like that, but at the same time, it's like, I mean, that's a normal teenager for you. But sometimes like I think that's a slippery slope as parents.
Well, I mean, you think we live in the golden age now? How do you think people, back in the 1800s lived? How do you think they got around without technology? They didn't have a hoop and stick. They had something to keep them entertained.
Yeah, you're right. No, you're right. And that's the thing. Like, I'm just saying it's evolved so much to where it's almost like I'm concerned that it's gotten out of control with the fact that we have so many things raging for our attention now. Like, the thing that's happened in your lifetime that I've seen is that we live in a more noisy world than ever. And since I'm in business and marketing and have, marketing agency and everything, I see that where you have to now pay to be able to get your message out in front of people where you to be above the noise. But like you are a perfect example of the fact that you've seen the noise start from when you were little, all the way and grow up and play Angry Birds. That's one of the favorite games you used to play back in the day, right? And so like you would actually see, this transformation of like all of a sudden you're on YouTube and watching all these streamers and these live streamers and everything, and people like the thing that really happened in your lifetime that amazed me is kids watching other kids play video games. Like that alone, I'm like, when did that become a thing? Like back when the Nintendo days where I come from and the Atari days, it's just like we were kind of like on our own, just kind of doing our own thing. And now it's just like, watch me play this game that you should be playing, and instead of going and playing the game itself. You know what I'm saying?
Well, that's just how my generation and generations after me were raised. They like to see other people's reactions.
Oh, really? Is that what it is? Is the reaction thing? Like
pretty much.
I never understood that. I mean, explain that to me.
It's just nice seeing other people try out a game that you might have tried or you want to try.
And their experience with it, right?
And their experience.
The shared experience.
How they react to it, if you should buy it or not. And I mean, people think it's funny to see other people's reactions to it.
That's cool. I just think it's an interesting thing that happened because that wouldn't even be a possibility. It's kind of like what happened and morphed into what YouTube has done, because the nice thing about digital, and I guess the bad thing about digital, is it's endless. Like you can have an endless amount of YouTube videos, you can have an endless amount of podcasts, you can have an endless amount of everything, and people choose to consume and do everything as they want. We live in an on-demand culture now, and I just find that as a cultural trend, like is like that's a good thing. But also it segments the heck out of everything. It used to be back in the day when I grew up, and this well, I had 4 channels. We had 4 channels back then. And if you didn't like what was watching on, what you were watching on the 4 channels, you turned it off, and you went out and played, But now it's like you have these endless with streaming TV and everything like that, it's all on demand. You can watch whatever movie you want to. You can watch listen to whatever song you want to because of Spotify and Pandora and all these other things. And I just think that's like cool, but at the same time, it's still a slippery slope. Everything has its consequence, right? Everything has a cause and effect. And so I think we miss that where we realize, oh my God, like I say all the time, we're in the golden age. It's a great time to be alive. But at the same time, I'm like, did we miss something along the way? Is it something that we somehow like just that we're leaving behind by accepting the fact that everything is on demand, everything is at our fingertips, and the whole world, like knowledge now with AI and everything that's coming out, like it's totally changed everything in the way that we do that. And AI has just been a thing that's happened in the last few years, but it's taken the world. I mean, ChatGPT, who has not heard of ChatGPT? Who has not heard of Netflix? Who has not heard of Amazon? These things didn't exist 20 years ago. Amazon started, you may or may not know this, but Amazon started as a, books and CDs. 2006, I think, is when it got cracked.
I remember that. I remember you telling me that.
Yeah, I told you that was before your time, but I just like, and look at it now. I mean, you can get somebody to darn near repair your car, off Amazon, like a service, and it's like it's taken over, a lot of the ways that we live, and it's in every part of our, our concept of living today. So we couldn't live without a cell phone. You wouldn't leave the house without a cell phone, right? I mean, you just wouldn't do it.
Yeah, you couldn't live without a cell phone. We depend on technology so much. It's scary.
Yeah. So what's scary about it?
It's scary that's how we have to rely on.
Do you think it's gonna be like the Matrix and the machines are gonna all take over one day?
Maybe.
It's possible.
But it's scary how we have to rely on machines and how much these machines mean to us. We don't realize it, but we're spoiled by it, robots and all that.
Absolutely. But the thing I've always noticed as a marketer about things in the business world is that you'll never replace the human emotion, which is one thing you and I share. Because the fact that we're both emotionally intelligent, I've raised you to develop an emotional intelligence. Like that's the one thing that we can convey that a robot cannot convey, as far as like the way that the human experience, And that's the thing that fascinates me about life, is the fact that we're all essentially human. We're all essentially flawed. But at the same time, we also have like this mindset that, oh my gosh, I'll just let everything's automated. I'll just let the bank pay all my bills and do all this other stuff. And it's like, what am I going to do with all this spare time? And what's the example of that, Jackson, in our life? What do we end up filling it with more stuff, right? We end up filling it with more technology clutter. Okay. And I'm the worst about this. I'm as guilty as I have. I have 3 laptops, I have a Windows, I have 2 Chromebooks, and I have an iPad and an iPhone and a Fire tablet too. I'll be honest with you with all my technology stuff. But I also use those tools for business and that kind of stuff as well. But what are some of the, like, what is your concern about that going forward as we move into the future?
I just think we rely on technology too much. Back in the day, you had to rely on a phone. But that was a trusty, like, hardware device that you couldn't get. It
was a hard line in most cases too, because it was connected, and like there wasn't even cordless phones when I was growing up.
And you couldn't. Now you have to rely by email. Sometimes everybody uses normal mail. And
the way that to get anything like from your doctor or whatever, you got to have a fax machine. Like for doctors, they're the only ones that use fax machines. Medical offices and that kind of stuff are the only ones that can, because of HIPAA laws and everything, can use a fax machine. But I remember the day where we were sending faxes like 3-4 times a day, and now the technology is almost obsolete unless in certain cases. So it's just amazing how it has transformed. That's, I guess, my point of that, and the fact that I wonder if it's a brave new world, and 2 books that I recommend that you read one day, that I read when I was your age in high school: Brave New World in 1984. Okay. So 1984 was, both of them are utopian books, basically dystopian, the idea with what we were dealing with, in technology. Brave New World even talked about us all being like on Soma. Soma was kind of like the drug that, and then birth control and all that other stuff was factored into the Soma that you took and that kind of stuff, and you stayed high all the time. Like the whole idea is you stayed sedated all the time, so you didn't think for yourself, right? The whole idea of 1984 and Brave New World is the idea is they did not want people to think. And one of the things that I noticed back when you were, heck, I guess maybe kindergarten, first grade, Mr. Kohler, you remember your principal? Mark Kohler, yeah, he was a great guy. So he basically came through and said to the PTA meeting or whatever we were at the time, he said, your kids can access anything in the world. They have this phone here that they can completely do whatever they want to with it, okay? They can look up anything. Knowledge is free now, right? I mean, the knowledge to find something out, you could just watch a YouTube video or something like that.
And you don't have to go to the library anymore to
That's
look
right.
it up.
You don't need a card catalog like I did when I was your age, so on and so forth. So the thing is that he said, "What do you remember what he said, Jackson? He is teaching us how to think, okay, as children, to think for themselves. He is teaching the students of that elementary school to think for themselves." What do you say about that?
I think they should,
Because if we let machines do all the thinking and that kind of stuff, we've lost the human art of.
We've lost our brains at that point.
We've lost what makes us human.
We've lost, we've lost how to think.
And I don't want that to be like the movie that is kind of making a comeback right now. Your mom talks about it a lot. Idiocracy by Mike Judge. That movie that was by Mike Judge. That came out like early 2000s, I guess, before you were born. But I mean, that movie was about what happened if like all the people that were smart didn't have children, and all the people that were, kind of not smart and, just kind of like not the sharpest tools in the drawer, they reproduce like crazy. Right. And the whole idea is like what the world would be like, if we had that kind of situation,
It's scary true. It's scary true.
There's another movie with, I can't remember the name of the actor, but it's called Children of Men. You've watched that with me before, a long time ago. Didn't you remember that? The whole idea is that it was about people it was about a world of kind of like a post-apocalyptic world, but it wasn't post-apocalyptic. Pretty much women could not conceive anymore. Women could not have children anymore, right? The oldest child in the world was 18 years old. And like there was like threats on his life and that kind of stuff. But he was like a super celebrity because he was the last of the Mohicans. He was the last human that had ever been born before this like drought of reproduction, started. It was just fascinating of what human nature would become if we ended up backing out of everything that we have as far as our reproduction of the species, and like what we would do as a humanity if that happened. And I thought I love movies like that. I don't know what that and zombie movies are like my guilty pleasure. Okay, you know that. So, but the thing is like, it was like this race to find a way for women to reproduce again. And it made me realize how human having children is and how human all that stuff means to me, as far as going forward with that. So anyway, but I just think that's part of also what makes us essentially, who we are. And then, there's other movies and that kind of stuff. Book of Eli is another one that I've watched, which is about a blind man. It was Denzel Washington going through life like with a Bible, with like the last copy of the Holy Bible, and he was basically trying to, get it to where it needed to go for it to be, cared for and that kind of stuff and everything, but. He was blind, and he had run into a lot of different turmoil and that kind of stuff. And it was just a fascinating. So I don't know what it is about those dystopian movies that, of the apocalyptic future and everything like that. But the interesting thing about all that I mentioned there is like what would happen if and like I often wonder. Here's a question for you: what happens 2 weeks no electricity?
We probably all start losing our minds. We're gonna have to go back to the Stone Age. We're going to have to use candles. We're going to have to use lanterns.
It's kind of like, and I don't want to bring up George Carlin's name as being the person that I got this idea from, but his whole idea is that we would become like, without electricity, without all the modern amenities we have now. I mean, it wouldn't take us but about 2 weeks, and we're back to the caveman days. And I don't know if that would be true. I can see when we have natural disasters and that kind of stuff and lose power and that kind of stuff. Well, everything that the whole infrastructure, what everybody's been working with is completely compromised at that point. Right. And so the whole idea is that nothing works. Nothing turns on. Cell phone towers need electricity.
Can't use cars, can't use boats, can't use planes.
And how is it going to work? And I'm not making any political statements here because that's not what this podcast is about. But the whole idea is that, what do we do in electric cars if there's no electricity? What do we do here? I'm going to just go off on a tangent real quick. What do we do with all the clean energy wind turbines after they're out of serviceable life? Okay. I mean, because I can tell you, they bury the wind turbines. The wind turbines we see when we go out to hunting in parts of Texas and that kind of stuff, we see them spinning and they're kind of cool to watch and everything like that. But for a while, and they're $1 million, turbines, or more, multi-million-dollar turbines, but those wear out. And you cannot just throw them in a landfill. You know what I'm saying? You cannot just throw a car battery for a Tesla, for instance, into a landfill. Okay. You have to dispose of those things. And let alone the post that I put on Facebook the other day about, muscle cars never being like a classic collectible like a Tesla, a muscle car being the same thing as a classic collectible car like a Tesla. I'm just sitting there going, there's just a disconnect for me. And I'm not saying that it's one thing after another, but it's just kind of interesting.
It's too modern from too classic. You can't mix the two together. It does. But they don't coexist.
Look, it's not just that. It's what if we were to have the conversation of would a muscle car ever, with the cool factor of the muscle car, would an electric car ever have the same appeal as a muscle car does?
It wouldn't make sense.
It wouldn't make sense. And that's not good or bad. It just is what it is. I just don't see like us going into, I've got this 19 or this 2000, 21 Tesla over here. That's this classic thing. I don't see that running across the auction block. You know what I'm saying? As being something like appealing for somebody because they're going to wear out. And then where do those batteries go? So that's the whole question about clean energy as your generation moves forward and Gen Z, and my generation becomes retired one day, because I'm 45 and I'm approaching, I'll be at 50 soon. I know, old guy, I know. But where do we go from here? You know what I'm saying? That's a question. It's just like all this stuff is emerging and coming out. It's 1,000,000 miles an hour and everybody wants to drive a Tesla and do clean energy and that kind of stuff. But there's price to pay for everything. There's a price to pay for all that. The fact that what do you do once something's out of serviceable life? You can't just throw it in a landfill. You have to dispose of it properly. It creates, to create clean energy creates byproducts of that, such as used wind turbines. Nobody's been able to answer that for me either of what happens when things like that happen. So anyway, all my tangents. You're used to it, Jackson.
I'm glad you got that out.
I'm good. All right. What else do you want to say? I don't want to keep you on here forever.
What questions you got?
Well, I got more questions. All right. I don't want to bore you with my questions here. All right. So we talked about hot button issues. What's your favorite type of music?
Probably rock.
And classic rock too. I must tell our audience because this kid is into Led Zeppelin and Jimi Hendrix and all this cool stuff.
Yeah, I like Jimi Hendrix, Zeppelin, Aerosmith, AC/DC, Rolling Stones, Beatles.
My point is that you appreciate the good music of the past that may never be created again.
Oh, well.
The thing is, the funny thing too is that you end up like, I like old R&B because there was so much soul in it, Marvin Gaye, those kind of guys like that, guys that just really put it out there. Bobby Darin, all the, classic R&B and then classic, other stuff as well. But, it's just, I don't think that I think that was an era. I think that was a time in and of itself that will never be created. Although you have so many people that are putting out new music every day, I just kind of find it funny in the trends of our world of what's good anymore. What is you have some of these guys like these goth rappers and that kind of stuff, and I never got that. These guys that are doing that kind of stuff, and I'm like, if you're just doing it for shock value and everything else, there's no art behind it. That's my whole point with that. So
I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah, no, I'm just a big nerd about all that stuff.
Sure.
These are the things I sit around and watch, and think about. Like one of my favorite things, Jackson, is what about how Native Americans and Indians are not the same, because there's 1 billion people that live in India, and though we call like Native Americans Indians, and what's the difference between them and that kind of stuff. So those are the kind of things that keep me up at night. I know I'm a big nerd, so you're used to it by now. So anyway, but thanks for being on the show.
I got nothing to judge you by.
No, that's good. I'm glad.
Best dad in the world.
Thank you. You're the best kiddo I could ever ask for.
I'd love to be on this podcast.
Thank you for being on this podcast.
I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I've dreamed of having you on the show for so long. You have to know that, and it's a dream come true to be able to do this with you. So you'll hear all the stuff at the end. Businesswithdustin.com. You've got DustinsProjects.com, DustinsBooks.com. All the stuff. But thank you guys so much for watching, reading, listening to all the stuff that I do, and thank you, Jackson, again for being on the show.
You know it,
yo. All right.
Thank you for listening to The Empowered Life with Dustin Vaughn Warncke. To learn more about Dustin, please visit his creator hub at DustinsProjects.com. Warncke Enterprises, Dustin's very own digital services company, can be found at businesswithdustin.com, and his books are available at either website or at dustinsbooks.com. Audio presentations of each of Dustin's latest books can be found on YouTube and streamed at no cost. Please subscribe to the Empowered Life podcast on your favorite podcast app, and thank you for your support and sharing this show with a friend.